one copy of Zeraora GX, so that's a really awkward prize card for him. He is, of course, playing the Jirachi-based build, so he has plenty of other pivoting options in his deck list, but the Zeraora can be such a gold standard for helping you retreat throughout the game.
All right, so Zapdos in the active for Rahul. He's going to Ultra Ball turn 1.
Pitching a Lily and a Tapu Lele GX, meaning his hand is pretty hot. I mean, when you're seeing these cards go into the discard pile, you know that he's got a big plan ahead of him for this turn.
He's got backups, and he's got backups for his backups.
His initial Ultra will go ahead and find him that Jirachi Stellar Wish. So vital for this deck. You're trying to pull out Electro Powers, energy switches, all sorts of different flexible options that he has available to him. We're going to see a second Zapdos hit the field, also a Lightning Energy get attached, and a Lily for 7 fresh cards here.
Yeah, the only reason you're going to discard your Tapu Lele and your Lily is if you have another Lily already in hand, and you simply don't need those 2 cards. He's got a Jirachi in hand as well now. This is just about the ideal setup here for Rahul. He's going to switch out the Zapdos and go ahead and get that Jirachi engine online. Start searching out all those trainer cards, thin through the deck, and pick up the tools that he really wants, which is going to be those switch mechanics. Guzma, Escape Rope, and of course Switch, which we saw him use this turn.
Yeah, there's 2 different ways you can try and approach this matchup as the Pikachu and Zekrom GX player. You can try and just be a Zapdos Jirachi build for the majority of the game, and then just have some late game finishing power with your GX and tag team Pokemon. As long as you can stay ahead with Thunderous Assault on lots of lower hit point evolving Pokemon, you can just win a prize race in that regard. Or you can just try and set your stall with a Pikachu and Zekrom very early and just try and overwhelm GXs that do hit Henry's side of the field. So far, only 1 energy on Rahul's board, but he's set himself up as if he's just playing a Zapdos Jirachi deck right now.
I really do like that this deck can play so flexibly. Obviously, you do have the pure power of the Pikachu and Zekrom, but in some matchups, it's just too much of a liability to really go down that route. So Zapdos has proven to be so potent that we're seeing people cut Pikachu and Zekrom entirely and just focus on playing Quad Zapdos. Now, of course, Rahul only has the 2 in the deck, but when you find both of them very early on, you have those search mechanics to do so. You only need the 2 of them.
You can see Henry looking through with his opening search. He's having to put a Tapu Lele GX onto the board, which is always a little bit scary when you are up against a Pikachu and Zekrom tag team GX deck. It's such an easy 2 prizes if ever a Tag Bolt GX does come online. A few other key cards he was looking for through his deck there. You could see he was eyeing up Mallow that's in there. Also, Counter Gain is a big card, so he can use a Lycanroc GX attack to respond if ever Rahul does pull the trigger and go for early Pikachu and Zekrom plays.
But going to send it back over to Rahul here. It was a nice first turn of setup with the Professor Elm's lecture for Henry, getting down the basics that he's looking for, but now he needs to follow up with that and actually be able to evolve those basics on turn 2. And this is very likely going to be Rahul's opportunity to take advantage of those lower hit point Pokemon on the bench, be able to manipulate the field and take an early knockout.
We know he's already got Guzma in hand. He's got another Switch in hand. He can retreat out of one Jirachi, get another Stellar Wish off this turn. He can be hunting down the Ditto Prism Star if he feels that's the biggest threat. This build is focused on Stellar Wishing as much as possible, so he is always concerned about a low and muck hitting the field. It would definitely slow his build down quite some. So here we're going to see him, as he already has the knockout prepared, he can just go ahead, grab some extra damage modifiers. The likes of Choice Band, the likes of Electro Power will help him later down the line. Even a Zapdos can quite easily deal with Tapu Lele GX as well with enough damage modifiers. So here comes the Guzma, obviously identifying the Ditto Prism Star as the easiest target to take. It's one that Henry can't rescue stretcher back, and it has the most potential to evolve into all sorts of things. So this gives Rahul the best chance of just protecting himself from a low and muck, but also denying Henry to just 1 Zoroark this turn maximum.
Yeah, you might as well take away the most flexible piece of the puzzle here, and that is just the Ditto Prism.
Timeable getting that 1 heads. Many people have moved away from Timeable now that we have Pokemon communication in the game, but Henry sticking to Old Faithful. Not always Old Faithful, because you can flip 2 tails and get nothing, but there is some potential.
Unreliable.
Old Unreliable is what we've been resigned to until Team Up came out.
Pre-release.
Yes.
What's his face?
But Pokemon communication coming out made many people stray away from Timeable. Too many times have you been in that situation when you flip double tails and rage quit from the game because you can't get a Zoroark into play. Henry got the 1 heads, and that's all really you hope for. He's going to need to look for a few more basic Pokemon this turn if he wants to get a knockout response with Rattata Beating. And he has used a Judge, though, at the very least, so it may be awkward for Rahul to find a switching card for his own Zapdos, and also a Guzma especially would be the thing that Henry doesn't want to walk into.
Yeah, kind of the issue with, playing Lycan Rock in your Zoroark deck is the fact that you want to evolve those Rock Ruffs at exactly the right time to make use of Bloodthirsty Eyes, and that means that you're often going to have these Rock Ruffs sitting there for a while before you can find that optimal timing, and that just means that they are going to be soft targets for Zapdos from Rahul.
Ooh, Icy Veins from Henry. He sees the snap call of a escape rope from Rahul, and there's already 2 Jirachis on Rahul's board. There's Choice Bands already committed to Zapdos. It's not asking much for Rahul to actually knock out this Tapu Lele GX with some extra damage modifiers here. Henry just saying, well, the Rock Waff is guaranteed, and I think I need those, so maybe you just whiff and can't knock out the Tapu Lele?
Yeah,
if Rahul can, it's huge.
He needs 2 Electro Powers, but we saw it happen earlier on today. Zapdos taking turn 1 knockout against Tapu Lele GX with double Electro Power Choice Band.
And Rahul can get a fresh 6 cards from Lily here. With enough switching cards, he could get extra usage out of Jirachi as well. There's 1 Electro Power, I believe. Just the 1 so far, so this dodging and weaving, the risky strategy from Henry might have bought him an extra turn as long as this Tapu Lele GX can take 1 hit. Rahul's going to use his own Viridian Forest Stadium, pitching 1 Lightning, getting 1 out the deck. It's so great for improving your own Stellar Wishes, and it's also fantastic at just making sure you guarantee energy cards. We saw Azul in the previous round losing games because of whiffing the low amount of energy cards that he does play. And Rahul's list chock full of way more energy because he's a Pikachu Zekrom build.
Zapdos only needs the 1 energy to attack. Pikachu Zekrom, you need 3 minimum, and then you would really like to have 6.
Yeah, it's a slightly different deck. It's just Rahul's playing the role of a Zapdos Jirachi player right now in how he's trying to set up this approach.
Yeah, I mean, it's 13 Pokemon for Rahul versus 20 for Henry, and then 36 trainers versus 32 trainers. So then that differential is going to be entirely made up with Lightning Energy.
So Rahul 1 Electro Power away. Unfortunate not to take the knockout in some respects with a 6-card Lily and a Jirachi, essentially an 11-card dig for 2 outs.
And he did hold on to the Electro Power because if you're not going to 1-hit knock out the Tapu Lele this turn, then dealing the damage just off of the Choice Banded Thunderous Assault is enough for the 2-hit knockout.
Sure. Henry is actually going to go ahead and opt to use Pokemon Communication. It's a card that's returned in the Team Up expansion. He's got that old classic artwork from Heart Gold, Soul Silver. You can simply show your opponent a Pokemon, put it on top of your deck, and find any other Pokemon, put it straight to your hand. So here, in this case, a Low and Muck, not that useful at the moment when there's no Grimers around. So instead, he's going to say, I don't want the Muck now, I want the Grimer first, so I can turn that into a Muck later down the line. Also going to see he's got double Colorless Energy. He can already retreat and guarantee a knockout. Doesn't look like there's many Acerola available to him, so this Tapu Lele being damaged may just stick around. He's also got a Guzma and an Erika's Hospitality in his hand. Erika's Hospitality, another new card from Team Up. You're allowed to draw up to the amount of Pokemon your opponent has in play, as long as this is one of a 4 or fewer card hand. Going to see the retreat now from Henry's Tapu Lele GX.
Gotta get that out of the active so it doesn't get knocked out.
You've got to, really. You have to. There's already, Rahul's got the choice now. You can either try and bring up the Tapu Lele GX and take 2 prizes, or you can deal with the Grimer. So Henry tried to give him multiple options and put him in a difficult decision.
Yeah, we'll have to see which one Rahul regards as being the more prominent threat.
It makes sense, especially when you're missing on healing cards. At least he's been able to fill his board this time, finishing off the Zapdos and preparing for future ones as well. He got the spare attachment on a Rockruff additionally, so he's always trying to keep in mind the fact that Rahul can burst a lot of attackers out of nowhere with his GXs in the back.
All right, so the first knockout taken by Henry there goes down to 5 prizes. And again, Rahul's only playing 2 of the Zapdos in his deck because this is a Pikachu and Zekrom deck primarily. So at some point he will have to shift gears and either be able to retrieve the Zapdos and continue with that 1 prize strategy, or eventually move into the Pikachu and Zekrom tag team.
And honestly, he may not be far away. He's got the Tapu Koko Prism Star and he's holding on to Tapu Koko GX, I believe, in his hand. He's not far away from just taking a knockout and removing the only Zoroark from Henry's board if he wishes it. There's still the potential for him to try and be more patient and take some more cheeky prizes with the Zapdos while they're around. Looks like opting to take nothing from the Nest Ball. He's going to be attaching a Lightning Energy to his Tapu Koko. It can't be the Tapu Koko Prism Star. Yeah. He's going to go ahead and use Jirachi first.
Think about that one, maybe.
He's going to grab Electro Power. This could open up the door for the Tapu Koko GX attack. The Tapu Thunder GX just to take out the Zoroark if he wishes.
Yeah, 3 energy on the board for Henry, so that's 150 plus modifiers. We can hit that 210 with 2 Electro Powers or Electro Power Choice Band.
Rahul really is debating which direction he wants to take it. It's really on him as to when he wants to commit these big 2 and 3 prize Pokemon to the board. There will be a point in the game where he has to, because he simply can't keep up the Zapdos pressure. He only plays 2 copies. And it's whether he wants to pull the trigger this turn or next turn. The fact that he's retreated into this Jirachi tells me he's more than likely going to be using Tapu Koko Prism Star into Aero Trail this turn. We're going to see a Volkner picked up from him. Still has the option to use a supporter.
I could find another Electro Power or Choice Band here and then Aero Trail all that energy onto the Tapu Koko GX.
Doesn't seem like a bad play at all. He's already holding on to 2 Electro Powers, so maybe it's something for a future turn. Holding on to a lot of good pieces here. It's actually awkward for Rahul because his hand is so good. It's just which direction to take. Normally, your hand only gets you so far, so you're only limited to a certain number of options. But in this case, his hand was so strong, he had the option even to try and attempt to get a Pikachu and Zekrom out this turn. But he's decided this is his best line, Aero Trailing into his Tapu Koko GX. For 2 energy cards, he still has his manual for turn, which will go onto his active as well. 2 Electro Powers going to be spent here, knocking Henry's only Zoroark GX out.
And that will be Tapu Thunder GX for exactly 210. Zoroark GX goes down, and Rahul is going to take his 2nd and 3rd prize card.
Very strong turn from him. He's asking a lot of questions of Henry now. When you have no Zoroarks, it's hard for you to find combination pieces. Henry can take a response knockout with a Lycanroc GX attack. Tapu Koko GX not weak to fighting, but there is already a choice band in Henry's hand, as well as a double colorless energy. Looks like there's no Zoroarks though, so this one Cynthia is going to be all he can use to try and get himself towards any Pokemon communication plus any Pokemon, any Zoroarks to draw cards towards Lycanroc or physical Lycanrocs. I like that he physically got rid of a Viridian Forest first, just to bin an extra card before using the Cynthia. He also had counter game that he could have committed, chose not to. Let's see if he's able to get himself any of those Lycanrocs.
He does find Ultra Balls, so he can search out that Lycanroc and take that kill of his own, that knockout of his own, put him down to 3 prizes. But the issue that I'm seeing then is still that that damaged Tapu Lele on the bench for Henry, and the fact that Rahul at any point in time could just Guzma that right up, bring his Zapdos out, take that knockout, go down to 1 prize, and then there's still a Zorua and a Rockruff on the bench that are really fragile and prime for knocking out to end the game.
And Henry's essentially on fumes now. This is all his hand. This is as far as his hand goes. Now his hand is just Ultra Ball and Acerola remaining. He's just put an Alolan Muck into play as well, so it's not like he can Ultra Ball out a second Tapu Lele. This is all he's got. It's his last stand here. This Lycanroc's going to have to carry him for a number of turns. Taking 2 prizes, but it's all he can do to keep up in the tempo, but his hand goes no further.
All right, and that is going to be Dangerous Rogue GX from Henry. Taking the knockout onto the Tapu Koko GX, he goes down to 3 prizes, but Rahul still has priority here.
And Rahul has plenty of gas left. I mean, he just needs 1 Guzma to take 2 more prize cards. There's lots of low hit point bench sitters as well. It's just the fact that he can't use Stellar Wish now, which was a big pickup from Henry, to be fair. It does deny somewhat the options that Rahul can do. He is already staring down at Guzma, though, which looks pretty powerful.
Yeah, at any point in time, he can knock out the Tapu Lele, take 2 more prizes, and put himself on just 1 additional turn for the win.
Rahul thinning out more Lightning Energies. They are fairly dead cards for him at this point. He's just looking for Runner Guzma or something along those lines to close the game out. That's pretty much where he's at, while he's slowly building a Zeraora GX in the background as well. Somewhat of a concern to putting it into play because it does have fighting weakness, and if he isn't able to sort of tempo out these next 2 turns, Henry has some easy prizes on the board for him to close the game in 2 turns himself. So Rahul's put himself on a clock here by putting the Zero Aura GX into play. He's hoping that he's able to get over the line with this Guzma.
I mean, it is about as well-timed as the Guzma can get here, especially after having whiffed on that second Electro Power earlier on to just knock out the Tapu Lele GX right off the bat.
He's got an awkward decision. He could try and Guzma up the Zorua and starve Henry of even more draw cards before it can evolve up, and that would be weak to an Acerola play. Or he could just take the Tapu Lele GX now. He gets to draw an additional card to help him finish the game next turn, whilst at the same time, Henry could evolve into more Zoroarks and get more draws and have more options, move more closer to his own Guzma, which Rahul is afraid of. So you can see the hesitancy from Rahul here. Difficult decision. Instead, he's going for Erika's Hospitality to increase his own hand size here.
He does get to draw 5 cards, picks up a second Guzma.
Going to see a Nespel from him here. Opting not to Guzma at all, it does pretty much make this game 3 attacks rather than the potential to only be 2 attacks. And he might just be a little bit slow off the mark if Henry's able to get into a better hand. At the moment, we know he only has Acerola and Ultra Ball and his 1 prize card.
But I do wonder if maybe this was a bit of a missed opportunity for Rahul, not taking the 2 prize knockout when he had the chance.
It's very conservative from Rahul. He's hoping that 3 attacks is enough for him to win the game, whereas risking everything and just being at 2 attacks it was a big risk to take.
Does Rahul strike you as being a super conservative player?
Not normally.
It doesn't seem to be his game plan to me either. So I mean, it just seems like, especially when you haven't seen Acerola at all this game, knowing that Henry is playing 2 of them, taking this 2 prize knockout on the Tapu Lele where you have the chance, and potentially putting it on, game point in the next turn, it just seems so tempting.
And double heads on Time Ball is huge for Henry. It gets him Bloodthirsty Eyes and your trade online. Bring me up that Zero Aura GX real quick. That's an easy 2 prizes for him to take. He can also trade, gets rid of a Zorua. He just needs to work his way into 1 more knockout after this. This is absolutely huge from him.
I mean, Rahul had been setting the pace of this game up until that very turn when he sort of pivoted and went to a much more defensive strategy, but it's looking like it is going to backfire quite significantly. I don't know. I think that after playing the Zero Aura GX, maybe Rahul just was a little bit too worried about the implications potentially and the fact that Henry could take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And then he decided to play a little bit scared. But maybe that's the moment where you need to just press in even further, because you know that your opponent can potentially race you now because you've given him the opportunity to take 2 prizes off of a single knockout. So at that moment, I would think that you would want to go even faster. But now Henry's down to just 1 final prize remaining, and Rahul doesn't really have a way to prevent Henry from taking it.
After all of Rahul's early pressure, it looked so promising for him. Henry had no Zoroark on his field. A big 2 heads from Timer Ball has really swung this game back in Henry's favor. He was also able to Viridian Forest and find a backup attachment for his other Lycanroc GX. Not able to knock out Zoroark in 1 hit, Zapdos in 1 hit without the help of Professor Kukui. But Rahul goes down to 1 prize and Henry just needs basically some energy cards here. I can see a double colorless in his hand. Guzma would seal it guaranteed. He has 2 basic. He only has 2 bench Pokemon. He could trade towards.
And he Ultra Ball
he
to
actually
a
has
Tapu
it.
Lele
He has
for,
guaranteed.
Yeah.
He has 2 basic Pokemon and the Stadium, which is exact.
Okay.
There we go. That closes the first game.
All right.
Henry impressively hanging on just enough to take the final prize there. He didn't really ever get optimal early game turns. Rahul's plan was to deny as many Zorua as possible and ultimately stop the amount of trades Henry could put up with. But all at once, a double heads was a huge tempo swing.
Absolutely.
And it really just brought Henry a huge way back into this game by knocking out that Zero Aura GX.
And the turn that Rahul could have chosen to Guzma up the Tapu Lele and take that knockout, he instead played Erika's Hospitality and drew 5 cards.
Yeah.
So though he could have definitely gotten the knockout on the Tapu Lele on that turn, it's not guaranteed that he could have had a knockout on the following turn because 5 of the cards that we saw in his hand at that point had not been there before. So I'm hesitant to call it strictly a worse line of play.
Sure.
But I do think that maybe at that point you need to open yourself up to taking some more risks.
Yeah. I mean, I was sat here thinking ultimate greed and just take out Zorua that turn when Rahul drew cards.
And then
You
hope
only
that
get
there's
one
no
prize.
Acerola.
Yeah, with a low hand size and no Zoroarks, I think it's the best time to not play around Acerola. So I probably would have sat there and been punished in a similar way Rahul did, even though we came up with different conclusions. So it was a surprisingly close game, even though the board states looked pretty ugly.
Well, game number 2. There still is plenty of time on the clock. That was a rather fast 6 prizes taken in that one. So Rahul going to be looking to get a quick game number 2 under his belt, and then send this one into game number 3. That's a Giratina opener
cards.
For
Henry.
not Giratina, excuse me.
Yeah,
no,
it's a Giratina. Yeah, he plays one Distortion Door Giratina just to fix some numbers at times.
Like, wow, I've seen that card a lot, but not
in
this deck.
Yeah, it's actually been in Zoroark as a tech card for a small while. Originally, it was in there for Blacephalon GX, and now it's kind of been used to jump over Sledgehammer from non-GX Zapdos variants. Henry actually did that in one of the games in his earlier feature match. Rahul led with a Tapu Koko Prism Star. He's commit an energy card and a skateboard to it so that he gets first Stellar Wish off here. His hand is looking pretty reasonable for next turn, and he's just going to pass it over to Henry now. Looks like Henry doesn't have much. A Professor
just for 2 cards.
Into Energy and Mallow. That is just an attach and pass, and
wow.
Rahul could win this turn. It's not out of his range. With enough Electro powers, switching cards, he could get there. He could even get Tapu Koko Prism Star into Tapu Koko GX to win the game as well. I think he might actually have everything
that he needs here. I mean, that was just the worst possible opening turn from Henry, and he's playing 4 copies of Professor Elm's Lecture. So to not have a Tapu Lele GX or an Ultra Ball for a Tapu Lele to have Professor Elm's Lecture on turn 1 and instead have to Kukui and just attach a double colorless to a Giratina is just about the worst possible scenario that he could.
Rahul has game here. I've just scouted his hand. He can get rid of both these Lightning Energy. He can just Energy Switch off the Koko Prism Star to anything and then use the Koko Prism Star to get the 3 energies into play. He can Aero Trail, and that's going to be a very fast game number 2. And straight away, he's back in the race.
Did I not say that Rahul wants to take a quick game number 2 and send this one to game number 3? You can't get much quicker than about 30 seconds.
Ideal. He's straight back into this now. An intense back and forth game 1. Horrible brick from Henry in game 2.
I will say, it's gotta really feel bad when you have to work for every single prize that you take, and then it's just a 1 prize attacker that's able to take the knockout, and unfortunately, you just lose.
Zoroark,
it happens, but man, that feels bad.
Zoroark feels like such a humble deck. Its only advantage is I draw more cards than you, but you're always having to play so well with Zoroark to stay in every game. And your decision making, you have so many more decisions to make than your opponent just because you see so many more cards. And when something like that just happens, you feel so bad because you worked so hard in one game and straight away all your hard work's
you're
undone.
basically playing a control deck.
Yes.
And working, half hour for every single one of your wins, and then your opponent rocks up with aggro and just smacks you in the face and gets you in 2 minutes, and you're like, well, I guess back to the drawing board.
Yeah, that is a way to win, unfortunately. Henry at least has a few more basics this time, and he gets to go first, which is a big advantage when you are an evolution deck, getting to go first. He has, I believe, Ultra Ball for a Tapu Lele turn 1, which doesn't seem too bad for him when his normal turn 1 is looking for Elms. Rahul with a couple of Guzma in there.
1 Electro Power as well, but he is going to be starting a Jirachi here, so that is optimal. And right off the bat,
it's a big pickup.
At least Henry's got a couple of basics here.
He's got himself a Professor Elm as his top deck as well, so he can save that Ultra Ball for either a Ditto this turn or for a second Zoroark next turn or a potential Tapu Lele next turn as well. That top deck is huge for Henry. He's not going to be stumbling on this opening first turn here or even next turn. Straight away, he goes ahead, grabs himself 1 Zorua, 1 Ditto, and a second Rockruff. This gives him the options for all sorts of evolutions next turn, guaranteeing the Grimer and the Ditto, something we saw him do against the previous Zapdos Jirachi player that he faced on stream because the Power of Alchemy does shut down Stellar Wish so well, and it does hurt Rahul when he's trying to piece together puzzles at times.
Awesome. So we are going to be having a solid game number 3, it looks like here, and that's what we're hoping for at this late of a stage in the tournament, this high level of play. And again, these players, this is their winning in. If they win this series, they will advance to the top 8 cut and get to play that out later today. So a lot on the line here for these guys, and we just want to see a good game of Pokemon here. So Rahul going to go ahead and nest ball, find that Zapdos, get that down, and ideally start with the same strategy that he had in game number 1, which is just to Stellar Wish, move these Zapdos up, take these early knockouts, and ideally prevent Henry from getting the Zoroark onto the board.
It is a turn 1 Lily, though, so that means Ditto and Alolan Grimer get to stick, as well as the energy on the Rockruff. Essentially everything is a better target for Rahul than the active Pokemon, thanks to how Henry set up his board. Here comes an Escape Route, though, so that's at least something in his favor. Rahul gets that big hand size rock in with the Lily, though. The Stellar Wish is going to be nice. The amount of Escape Ropes in these decks is absolutely phenomenal that we've seen in this tournament. It's become a huge staple in all the Jirachi-based builds. Rahul's going to continue to develop more Zapdos here, rather than more Jirachi, as he's got to anticipate an Alolan Muck coming down on turn 2 here.
Yeah, you see Ditto and Grimer, know that you can knock out one of them potentially, but definitely not both. I think it is safe to assume that your Jirachis are going to be locked for the next turn.
You see a lot of Electropowers as well. He's got a lot prepared, to be honest, in that opening Lily. It did really good work for him. Henry, unbelievable that he's bringing up a Ditto Prism Star here. The Ditto Prism Star could be any card, and he's still valuing it over just a physical Grimer here, which is very bizarre to see.
It is so very flexible.
The only downside of the Ditto is that you can't Rescue Stretcher it back. And that's the only small downside in comparison to these other things that hit the discard pile. So it only ever makes sense to bring up something else, in my opinion. Regardless, we see a Zoroark.
I mean, unless there's, you know, a difference in damage that these Pokemon can take, but Thunderous Assault is going to knock out the Grimer and the Ditto, so that's really irrelevant. But there is a Zoroark, and now Henry can trade away.
Well, Kukui and Stadium gets him guaranteed knockout. We're going to see him actually have to Ultra Ball away double Colorless Energy, and Guzma. You can see how much he values this Alolan Muck, thanks to some nice math fixing. He only has 3 Pokemon on his bench, so that's only 80 so far of Ritus Beating, but the Kukui plus the Stadium gets him guaranteed knockouts here, and he's just said, Muck's good for me, Ritus Beating, let's go. 1 Zoroark is going to be enough for me for now, just because I'm trying to shut you down.
He's doing quite a good job of it. Again, Rahul's only got 2 Zapdos in the deck because he is playing a Pikachu and Zekrom variant, even though we have not actually seen him make use of Pikachu and Zekrom up until this moment. It is looking like Rahul is going to start to invest in building up this tag team Pokemon.
Oh my goodness, that is a huge risk from Rahul. He's put down a 3 prize Pokemon, attached 1 energy to it, and simply passed when Henry is sat there with a fighting energy on a Rockruff. The only saving grace for Rahul, once again, is that there's only 1 Zoroark in play, so Henry can't draw a ridiculous amount of cards, but looks like Rahul's hand is just it's not doing what he wants.
Rahul's shaking his head. He's not looking happy with this, and there is Lycanroc GX. Pikachu and Zekrom tag team into the active.
Does he have energy? Oh my goodness.
He's got it.
This is huge. Rahul head in hands, you can see. Yeah.
I mean, Rahul took a risk there,
it means a lot to Rahul as well. Oh my goodness.
It's a risk that I suppose could have paid off. He could have been able to attack on the next turn with full blitz if he gets rid of the Tapu Koko and has an energy that he can commit from hand. But I mean,
it shows you how devastating Muck is. It shows you that Rahul essentially had so many. He had a large hand size. Like even now, his hand size is really massive. It's just he couldn't do anything with his hand without the help of Stellar Wish. And now he just had to have 1 slow turn. But Zoroark doesn't allow you slow turns, especially when you can use that Lycanroc GX to take a big knockout.
Zoroark is going to take a little bit longer to get going, but when it does,
GX marker flip
every single turn.
From Henry. That's something we do need to see, because he could only knock out the Pikachu and Zekrom if he used his GX attack. 3 big Electro Powers from Rahul here, pushes him to 170 damage.
That's not 200. If he'd had the Choice Band, he would have actually had the knockout on the Lycanroc. Unfortunately, just going to be 30 damage short here. And that is going to open up Lycanroc GX for a Claw Slash, just to go ahead and knock out the Zapdos if Henry wants to do so.
Rahul shaking his head. He knew that Henry had already pitched 1 double colorless. There was 1 already committed to his Zoroark. And
chances of him having another one
how do you have another one of these?
Not great. But
he's got the 4th as well, just to make life even more. You can see how annoyed Rahul is with this.
Oh, yeah. He, well, can you really blame him?
No. Getting so close, being in the last round and seeing someone get fairly fortunate to have the right combination to deal with you all at once is really tough to take. And he is an emotional player, as we've seen. The game means a lot to him. He plays week in, week out. He travels the world to play Pokemon. And when something unlikely happens to you in a crucial moment, it's just very upsetting.
It's going to hurt. All right, that's going to be Giratina, and they shake hands. That's going to be game. Henry Brand, representing the Oceania region, going to go to 10-3-1, and that means that he is going to lock up the necessary 31 match points to make it into the top 8. So some good news for the Oceania region, bad news for fans of Rahul Reddy here. You can see that he's taken this one quite seriously. After game number 1, where maybe he took some unnecessarily defensive lines, and then just such a blistering fast game 2, he just is going to have a hard time maybe getting past this one. But you know what? These tough beats happen when you have a player who has played as long as Rahul